What's up, everybody? We're going to have a short session today on how to learn APIs, how to use APIs in your code. So let me go ahead and get started. Pull up the slides. So for those who don't know me, my name is Alex. I'm the president of DSC UCF. Happy to be here, as always. Session 4 of our Building a Full Stack web app. TJ, please introduce yourself.
Hello guys, if you were not in the last workshop, my name is Saitesh Mopuri, but I go by TJ and I'm a tech lead at Developer Student Club at UCF.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to present some slides on APIs, and then we're going to do some demos, and TJ and I are going to kind of split that up. All right, so TJ, I'll have you back on stage in just a few minutes. Okay, so to begin with, if you don't know what an API is, API stands for Application Programming Interface. Although this sounds like an intimidating name, APIs are just fragments of code that make it possible for devices, programs, websites, and servers to communicate with each other. They are usually referred as behind the scenes of many of the services that we utilize. But let's dig a little bit deeper. Websites, mobile apps, and APIs usually do the same thing. They provide you with data, images, content, videos, and other information. While websites and mobile apps present rich user interfaces full of colors, animations, and things that look pretty, APIs also provide you with the raw data that's machine readable information for the program to make sense of and present that to the user. So something in this slide that I'm going to talk about here in a second that you can see is actually this text right here. Okay, that maybe looks a little bit weird if you haven't used APIs before. And that's because data like this is in a JSON format. JSON is a lightweight format for storing and transporting data. The syntax is derived from actual JavaScript object notation syntax, but the JSON format itself is text only. Code for reading and generating JSON data can be written in any programming language. APIs are common with websites, desktop applications, and mobile apps. Google alone has hundreds of powerful APIs through Google Cloud. The Maps API features all kinds of interactions with locations, coordinates, establishments, and streets. The Google Data Store features a scalable database service for your next project. Google Firebase features an API for authentication, real-time data storage, and even website hosting. App Engine provides instance hosting for websites and backend of mobile apps. And the Cloud Vision is an API powered with machine learning to classify and label images from Google. So how do we access all of these resources mentioned? Most of APIs provide us with access through HTTP requests or a client library. For short, HTTP requests is basically a form of communication between a computer and a website. A client library is basically importing code from an external source. For today's event, we'll be using an API using HTTP requests. And HTTP requests is simply a request for information. If you look at the example on the screen, we can translate the formatted HTTP request into the following, how you would normally communicate, I guess you could say. So you're basically saying, yo, Google, give me the results of searching for UCF. I'm a Chrome browser and I run Windows 10. I accept a bunch of different return types, but I prefer HTML. While it's important to learn about the structure of HTTP requests, we're providing you with the basics just to get started. So Postman is what we were going to really dive really deep in originally today, but we're still going to go over what Postman is. Postman is really valuable for testing your APIs and seeing the results that come back. So a little bit later, TJ is going to demo Postman for us and see exactly how valuable it can be when you're creating these projects. So first, what we're going to do is I'm actually going to bring TJ back on stage so we can kind of tag team, answer questions, and talk about some of the topics as we're going through them. First, I'm going to do a very basic API request in HTML. And then I'm going to use some JSON placeholder, free fake APIs, if you will, and then kind of show you what getting that data and then displaying that data might look like. And then TJ is going to give you an overview of Postman, how to use it, and just kind of show you their very rich documentation on how to learn more. And then he's going to go into a real world application, which is something that he's been working on, which is super cool, by the way, to use APIs with Twitter data and stuff like that. So TJ, I'm going to go ahead and bring you back on stage. And I'm going to share my screen and go through just some quick demos of those APIs. And TJ, I invite you to give any further detail as I'm going through these, if any questions come into chat, and we'll just do it that way.
Awesome.
I'm going to bring down that presentation real quick, quickly reorganize my screens, and then we'll go through this demo. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. I'm going to make the text a little bit bigger because this is probably pretty small. Okay, and I'm actually going to, no. I actually don't even know how to exit the split view. Is it like that? No, that's even worse. Here. How do I get rid of these split views?
Yeah, let's see.
There we go. I got it. There we go. I had edits open. That's why it wouldn't let me close it. Okay. All right. There we go. We got it. Okay. So here's demo one. All right. So demo one. This is I just want to say, yeah. So usually APIs that you might use in your code or in an application or something like that, you're going to put in a URL kind of thing, and that's how you're going to get the data. But in this case, the fetch API that we're using here is actually pulling the data from a local JSON file. Okay, so this is what a JSON file would kind of look like. Okay, so separate into different objects with different fields, and then this would be our HTML. So for those of you who were at our HTML event, this probably looks a little bit familiar. We have our doc type HTML saying that this is an HTML document, and then we have our head body. So very basic, right? In terms of HTML, we have a div tag, an empty div tag with an ID of my data. The ID is so our function down here, our JavaScript function, actually knows where to put the data that we are going through. So we have our fetch. We're specifying the name of the file right here. And then we're basically returning that JSON. And then down here, we have a loop where we're going to go through the data in the JSON. And this is where we're defining what we're doing with it. So we're basically writing an HTML name and then a space. And then we're actually inserting, using JavaScript, first name from the JSON. So let's go back to the JSON real quick, okay? So we have a first name field, first name John, Mary, George. So that's where that is coming from. And then we're actually going to add a space and then insert the last name. So again, we have a last name field here. So that's where it's getting it from. And this loop is just going to iterate through the entire JSON file until it gets to the end. So that's because it's a for loop. And for those of you really learning about any coding language right now, this for loop should look very familiar to you. And then the last line is basically appending this to that div that we specified. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in live server just to show you what this would look like. Now keep in mind there's no formatting. This is just pulling the data from the JSON, throwing it into an HTML file, and this is what it would look like. Open it with live server. That actually opened up on the wrong window, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that over. Okay, so here is that HTML file. I went ahead and blew it all up. So this is exactly what just happened. Is we put the name in HTML. We put that with the quotes name, and then we did the plus, and then we did the first name. Then we concatenated a space, and then the last name, which was Doe. So that's how we got that line. And then the loop iterated to the next object in the JSON file, which is Mary Peterson and then George Hansen. Okay, this is not really not that complicated. Now you might be asking, okay, did you type out this JSON by yourself? Where did you get the data? All of that. That's actually a good question. So I'm actually going to switch my screen for a second and show another site. So you could actually go to the JSON placeholder website. I'm actually going to drop that link here in the chat right now. And this is where you can just use some fake APIs, as they call it. But I mean, they still work as regular APIs with just some dummy data. Most of it's like lorem ipsum stuff and fake names that you can use just to use in your code. So you can go to that site. You can scroll down. You can see their different resources, and you can see in the browser what those JSON files hold. So in the next example, I believe I used the users. So you can see all of the JSON data here. So, and like, for example, let's just look at a specific object. So it looks like each object has an ID. It has a name, a username, an email, an address, phone number, website, company. So in the next example, I'm using just a different data set, but pretty much the same thing. So let me go ahead and switch back to the code. So here is demo 2. And I'm trying to remember which one was the right one. Let's go ahead and just see if this is the right one. Let's open this with live server. Okay, so this is pretty much the same exact thing that we just did, but just a little bit bigger of a data set. So let's go ahead and switch back to the code first before I talk about the live server. All right, so this is pretty much the same exact syntax as I just did. Really, you can see the only difference here is in fetch, we used the HTTPS link instead of the name of the document, which is in the same directory as the HTML. Okay, so in this demo 1 folder, we have the HTML file, and then we have the people.json down here. And we only need to specify the name of the file because it's in the same directory as the index.html. And demo 2, we don't have a JSON file. It's actually pulling the data from the JSON file at this link, which is that JSON placeholder site that I just showed you. But it's doing the same exact thing. It's iterating through that JSON, and it's in HTML, typing out name, then concatenating it with data.name, then concatenating with a space, and then the username. So if we switch back to the browser, this is pretty much what it would look like. So the name, this is actually the name right here, and then Brett is the username for that user. And if we want to confirm, is this right? Do we even know that this data is right? Well, we still have access to the data. Okay. This is the first object that it pulled, which is this one. So this is indeed the name, and that is the username. So we know that that is correct. And another demo which kind of cleans it up a little bit. I did find this demo on GitHub. Very cool. It's the same exact concept here. We're using JSON placeholder data, but this time it's organizing it into an HTML table. Okay, so down here in the body, we have a table, and then the table headers, and then it's going to this function is going to iterate through the JSON data and basically create lines in that table with the JSON data that we're getting. So let me go ahead and run that into a live server to show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so this one's a little bit different. It actually has a button. You click the button, and then it will populate the table with some of that JSON data. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. And that's a little bit big. So I'm actually going to shrink that down for a second. You see that they have a ID, user ID, title, and body. And then that function just iterated through the entire JSON file and then inserted that into the table, which is super cool. And if you want to check out this source code, we're going to put it on our GitHub. But the source where I found this is right here. I'm dropping that into the chat should you want to check that out. Now, I went through that super fast. And some of you guys are wondering, okay, but how do I know how to get data from an API in whatever language I'm using? And things like that. Now down here, this is really just JavaScript. So once you get the data, in terms of what you're going to do with the data, that's going to depend on if you're using JavaScript. You should definitely practice some JavaScript on your own and figure out how to manipulate that data to present it in the way that you want for your application. But in terms of getting that data, if the question is, how do I get the data in Python? How do I get the data in JavaScript or what have you? That's where Postman comes in. You can test out your APIs. You can have Postman literally spit out the code for calling that API and doing different functions. So TJ, before I move on, I know I went super fast. Is there anything specific you'd like to add on some of those demos that I just went over before we dive into Postman?
Not really, Alex. I think you did a really good job, but I feel like at this point, the most confusing thing our viewers might have is like when you do that dot sub I dot name, like you're referencing an object, right? They don't even know where that object is coming and how do you know that those fields actually exist, right? Maybe some of them are confused right now. That's where the Postman comes in. Like in a minute when I do the demo, you can actually see all those fields on Postman. And when you start coding, you can straight reference from those objects so that you don't get the null point error exception anytime.
Yep, 100%. I agree. So with that said, TJ, if you could open up Postman and let me know once you're all set up there, I can go ahead and let you share your screen if you like.
All right, cool. I'm gonna hit share screen. Screen sharing. Okay, share screen. I'm gonna share this one. Okay, cool. Alex, can you see my Postman?
Yes, I can.
So right here, we have exactly the same URL, right, Alex? Was it users or was it posts that you were?
That is correct. Yep, I was using users.
Cool. So when I send this request, you guys could see like a quick second. It sent a request. It came back with a status 200. Okay. So this is a very nice API to start with, but usually when you work with a company or any other projects, sometimes you hit an API and you get a 403 error, like saying you're not authorized, right? You're working in a company and someone in your company forgot to give you the authorization to actually access the API. So you would get like a 403. So Postman is really good to like prototype the API, whether it's working or not, before you jump in and start writing code, right? Imagine you start writing code and you get this weird 403 error and you're thinking, oh, am I wrong or do I not have the authorization? So this is where Postman will be really helpful. When you get a 403, that means it's an unauthorized. So like you talk to your boss or someone and get authorization. Or if you get a 404, that means you made a bad request. So right now, everything looks great. Status is 200. Okay. I don't want to go too deep into all these statuses. They have all different kinds of statuses and I only know 200, 403, and 404 because I hit them all the time. Mostly 403. In my company, when I'm working, I'm hitting 403 all the time because they always forget to give my authorization, like so. So right now you can see all these fields that got back. Like this is what Alex was showing in a table, the ID table, the name, the username, um, trying to find the user ID. I guess user ID is not here. But you can see this is how he was referencing. So this is the JSON object. See, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, right? So he's getting back this object, and now he's referencing the name, the username, and then he's showing it on the table. You can even get address and all different kinds of things. So that's a GET request that we can do. With this API, you can also make a post request. A post request means, so when you do a GET request to an API, you're getting back the data. When you do a post request, you're actually posting data to the database. And right now, since we are in a test environment and we are testing this fake API, the JSON placeholder API, we don't need any authorization. But usually, when you're working with real databases, it's better to have like a token to verify that you are the right person, because you don't want everyone to be writing to your database, right? Like then people are gonna spam your database, or like if you have important financial information, you don't want it to be open to the internet. So we're gonna make a post request, and you see it returned a status 201. So 201 is created, and it made an ID of 101. See, I don't want. So if you go to the documentation of JSON placeholder, let me see if I have it open real quick. In the guide, yeah, over here you can see when I make a post request, I get back an ID of 101, which I don't want. So I have another tab opened up. So over here, we're doing we're what the put function does is it actually updates the post that we just made, right? So when I send this request, okay, I got 101, and when I send this request, the ID is going to be changed to 1, and the status is 200 because we didn't create anything, right? So the operation that we wanted to do went okay. And another thing we can do is the delete. So this is how like Postman will be really helpful before you start writing code. You can actually test if all the APIs are working fine. You can make GET, POST, request, and then you can dive in, whether it's Node.js or JavaScript or sorry, Node.js is JavaScript, Python or Java, whatever language you're using to actually fetch data. Right, Alex?
Yeah, that's perfect. TJ, if you could, in Postman, why don't you go ahead and quickly show how you can pretty much export like code snippets in any language you want that you can integrate into your code. I think it's I think it's in the top right hand side, and then you click the little code snippet right under the little like view button thing, a little bit more to the right. Right there.
Oh,
Yep. Go ahead and click that.
this is a new feature. I had no idea about this.
And then if you go under code snippet, and then you can choose whatever you like, and it'll format
Yeah.
it for pretty much whatever language that you're using.
Yeah, you can do a JavaScript fetch. That's how it would look like if it's a fetch. Oh, you can just see, guys. This is how much code you have to write for C. And if you just did Python, let's see, that's what it gets to Python. Like, like the lines just went half.
Yep.
And it's more readable.
Yeah, so this is a very, very cool feature because if you're working in multiple languages, or you're learning something new for the first time and maybe you don't really know how to integrate APIs into what you're using, Postman takes the guesswork out of it, which is super cool. And also, if you're working in a language that it's actually not listed in that drop-down menu, Postman is actually an open source project, so you can actually contribute to helping them build out the functionality for it to generate code snippets for whatever language should it not be in the list. So that's super, super cool. Like I said, I know we're going pretty fast here, but we really just wanted this session to be an overview of APIs, what they do, and Postman as a resource that we are highly suggesting that you go check out. I dropped a link for Postman. If you go to this link here, which is postman.com/downloads, it'll automatically download for whatever operating system you're using. And then you can use it in the web, but it's not as fully featured. So I recommend you download the desktop version of it. That's pretty much it. I will mention though, if you're on Mac OS, I did have some issues downloading it this morning. If you run the app and it doesn't actually open up, but it's running in Activity Monitor, I would suggest closing that activity out, kind of like exiting stuff out in Task Manager, and then reinstalling it. That seemed to fix the issue for me. And yeah, check it out. Postman has some really, really awesome documentation on anywhere from beginners to advanced users. It's very, very cool. I highly suggest it. If anyone has any questions about what we've gone over so far, I know we've gone super quick. But we're going to post some resources after this event for you to keep learning about APIs and things like that. And then later on in the last two sessions, we're actually going to use APIs in our web app in a little bit more of an advanced way. But today I wanted to focus on going through those very simple demos in HTML that we're going to push to our GitHub repo shortly after the event, so you can test it out for yourself. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in chat, and TJ and I would be happy to answer. TJ, if you have anything you want to add, or if you want to move into Twitter, I'm all good. I'm all good for it.
There's this another substitute for Postman. If you guys don't like using Postman, you can also check out Swagger. Swagger.io is another good API API testing environment that you can check out. So yeah, one thing I wanted to really quickly show is for my work, I was developing this Twitter app. So we were fetching Twitter data to make some simple analysis on Twitter. So this might be a little overwhelming, but all I wanted to quickly show is that, okay, this is the developer portal that you have to register your keys and stuff. If you go to the documentation, you'll get everything about it, but I'm not going to go too deep in that. So what I wanted to show in the notebook is, once you get your access keys, this is what I was talking about in the Postman, right? Like, you don't want everyone to be hitting your API. You want the right access. So I don't want to share my keys publicly because, I don't want anybody to access my account in the Twitter developer portal. So those keys will be yours if you sign up for your own developer portal. You will replace your keys to your own keys. So I'm just going to run this other notebook that I stored secretly. And then, okay. So this is the function that makes the call to the Twitter data. And then it grabs all the data from Google Tweets. So you can see this data frame. If you're confused about if you never touched Python, and if you're confused about what is a data frame, what is all that, this is just a quick demo. All I did in this function is it went to the Twitter portal, got all the tweets and likes and retweets, created that, and just made a simple CSV file, and then just stored everything here. And in this other notebook, what I do is I import that data, and then I do some basic explorations on it, like what are the likes, plotting the graphs, and cleaning the text, and building a word cloud to see what are some words that are used often in Google Treats, right? So it's basic analysis. You can do this analysis with any username you want, and generating a frequency table. This is another API that I'm fetching so that I can compare the frequency that I'm getting in the Twitter data and the frequency in the actual world, like how frequent these words appear, so that I can remove the most common words from the data. So this is like a quick overview. You guys might feel a little overwhelmed, but like don't feel overwhelmed. I just wanted to show you the power of APIs through this notebook. That's pretty much it, right, Alex?
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, TJ, I would, if you're willing to, you don't have to. I would love for you to just quickly speak about kind of like what you're working on at work, because it was very interesting to me just to brag about yourself, if you will, in that
Yeah,
project. It's very cool.
it's it's nothing crazy, guys. Like due to pandemic, like a lot of companies don't have um, enough money to hire employees, right? So they are all looking towards artificial intelligence. So right now we're working on a project on marketing. So this is what I was building using Twitter, right? So I was fetching all the data from Twitter and trying to see what are some words that are unique to the company that I'm working right now, right? So like so that I can target the right audience. And after that, so that's an AI that we are working on. We already have another AI placed in that engages with the users. So what we are trying to do is like use this data to find the right people that will be interested to be our customers, and then use another AI to keep them engaged. So we're trying to like connect two different AIs together and see what happens. It sounds a lot like Skynet, but that's not that's not what's happening.
It's very
So
cool. It's a very cool project. So just to give everyone some context behind a little bit about what TJ was showing there, it's very, very, very cool project, and um, hopefully will give you some context and real world application of some of the things that we talked about today. Um, APIs is just really not one of those things that has a ton of content that we could go on for forever and ever and ever. But when it comes to implementing the APIs into your code, of course, I think it definitely depends on what language you're using. But more often than not, if you're building a web app, you're probably going to be what's the word I'm looking for? Transform your data using JavaScript.
mhm.
You're going to do a fetch and then do any of those API requests like TJ was showing you inside of Postman. So I guess moving forward, like the next steps is, using some of those JSON placeholder APIs just to practice using them. Definitely use Postman. It's a free tool. Make an account and download it for sure, and test out like TJ was doing to plug in that URL and see what you get back. And that's what you're going to get back when you plug it into your HTML. So then go ahead and open up an HTML document and try it out. And then look at other GitHub repos, see how people are transforming that data and doing things with it. Are they putting it into tables? Are they doing some type of validation based off the data? Are they running functions that go through each object and then have if statements depending on this data and stuff like that? I mean, you can do whatever you want with it, and it'd be very cool to see what you can do in your web
Yeah,
app.
yeah, guys. Like APIs are something that are really simple, but it's something that you would do every day if you are a software engineer. Like you would use it every day. Like Alex might write an API tomorrow that I might be using it for everyday purposes. So like Yeah, it's a very straightforward, simple, but it's very, very powerful tool that you use every day.
Awesome. Yep, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't planning on having this event to be 2 hours by any means, and we've only been going for 35 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to discuss anything, thoughts, questions, concerns, anything like that. In the meantime, there are maybe a couple resources that I had written down that I would love to drop into the chat and into the Discord for kind of further practicing on those APIs. If you are tuning into this event right now and you're not in our Discord server, please join our Discord. Go to our website, dscucf.com, and click Discord to join our Discord server, and then you can drop stuff like that. Let's see. Okay, so some of you are saying that you would love to have another video about writing an API. Okay, we can totally do that. We didn't know if we didn't really know if people wanted to see us making like our own API, but now that we know, we'd be happy to do like a separate session to do something like that. I think we can pull that off, right, TJ?
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. Because what you did, Alex, like he used this a local JSON file, right? And then he showed it in a HTML page. If we wrote our own API, the only difference is going to be is that that JSON file is going to be living in a database somewhere in the cloud, and we will fetch that from the cloud and show it on the HTML page, right? So we can definitely write an API. Probably we'll do that for the next session. It will be really interactive.
Yeah, and actually, let me go ahead and pull up the code one more time just to kind of demonstrate that, because what TJ said is 100% correct. I mean, the only difference between the demo 1 folder and the demo 2 folder is demo 1 is getting the data from a local JSON in the same directory, and the second one is, like TJ said, I think he said that perfectly, is the JSON file just living in a different area. It's, in this case, it's living on a different web server on the internet, just not on our local machine. So that's why I plugged in the link instead. So I'm gonna quickly just open that up real quick. And again, this code is gonna be on our GitHub repo right after we're done. That way you can run it in VS Code and you can test out how it works. So let me go ahead and actually pull that up again, just to kind of show that again, since I did go through it very quickly. All right. Okay, so yeah, so here we go. So yeah, again, so I'm gonna open up like both of these real quick. So I mean, pretty much what I wrote in these documents is pretty much exactly the same, except for the fact that here in the index for demo 1, where it says fetch, what are we fetching? We're fetching people.json, right? And people.json is right here. So yeah, we're just getting that data from objects inside of the JSON file that's on our local machine. We actually have the file, and in fact, I can actually use the exact same JSON data set in both of these examples just to show you that the output is pretty much the same, because I did use a different. I used the user's data set, and I can actually use the user's data set in here too, just for continuity purposes. So just give me 1 second, and I'll show you that. All right, so I'm going to copy the whole users into people.json. Yeah. Okay, so now if I open this with live server.
Alex, while you're doing that, I'm just going to answer this question really quick.
Sure.
Any advice on the process you go through when trying to get used to using another API? It's a very straightforward process. So they will, I mean, if you're working in a company or a project, you make a quick Google search, or sometimes in your company they give you the URL. So if you're working on a project, let's say you want data from, I don't know, Facebook, right? So the process would be like you would search for Facebook API, and then it will come up with a lot of documentation on how to get started. They probably have some tutorials. And so you sign up with Facebook developer account. They will give you some access keys. You take that access keys and the URL that you want to hit to get the data, and you go to Postman, and then you paste the credentials and the URL. And if it works out, it will give you a status of 200. If it doesn't, then it will give you a status of 404. And it takes a little bit of time to debug. Maybe you got the wrong URL, or sending the keys in a wrong format. So that's the general process of how you use a new API that you never tried before, right? Does that help, Kristen?
Yeah, and after I can quickly show what the issue was that I just had and fix that. But also we could probably, TJ, we could probably pull up the documentation for some pretty popular APIs as well, just to show like, had you been taking the first steps to start using an API, what would my research process look like to kind of like learn it a little bit and how to use it? We can go ahead and do that. Quickly, I wanted to show, I wanted to use the same data set for demo 1 and demo 2. That way you can see that the output is exactly the same. But I ran into an issue, and I'm going to show you what happened. Okay, so when I did it, I got name undefined. Okay. So yeah, Google Maps. Yeah, we can pull up the documentation for that for sure, Kristen. So why do we get undefined? Well, let's go ahead and check. Let's go back into HTML. Okay. All right. So first, this is the line that is basically concatenating our text and our data into the string that's being outputted, right? So what is the issue? Okay, we got undefined. Okay, so let's look. We did data.firstname and then data.lastname. Okay, now keep in mind we changed the data set. That way the data sets are the same between demo 1 and demo 2. All right, so that's probably the issue. Let's go ahead and check it out. All right, so we're looking again for first name and last name. If we go into the data set, we don't have a first name and last name. We have a name and username. So that's probably our issue. So let's go ahead and change the first one to name and the second one to username. All right, so this is going to be data.name. And then this one is .username. And let's just double check that we did that right. Yep, we got name here, username here. Okay, so that should be good. I'm going to save that. Open it up with live server again. That fixed our issue. Okay, so now we have the correct line showing. Okay, again, it's showing the name followed by a space, followed by the name, followed by the username. Okay, now let's compare this to, that was the local JSON. Let's compare that to the demo 2, which we used the URL instead. What is the difference? All right, let's go ahead and check that out. Okay, so now we're into demo 2. All right, the only difference is that in fetch, instead of the name of a local JSON file, we're using that JSON placeholder user's dataset URL. Everything else is the same. And also, we're not going to run into that issue because I already had it set up as name and username, so we're not going to have an issue there. So I'm going to right click, open up with live server. All right, so now I was going to have them both side by side, but this is both the same. This is the exact same output that I just got. Name followed by space, followed by the name in the data set, followed by space, followed by their username. It's the same exact thing. It really didn't make much of a difference. Now, would it make much sense to have all of your JSON data in a local JSON file inside of your directory? Probably not, especially if that data is changing constantly. So if that data is on a database, you're not going to have the JSON file local in your directory because that's changing. But I just wanted to really show you, the most basic way of testing an API with the JSON data. This is going to be probably the more realistic way that you're going to use it. This is really just for a demo purpose. So there's really no difference in between this one and this one. in terms of the output or the data itself. We're using the same exact data set. Do you have anything to add to that, TJ, before we dive into kind of doing some research on APIs?
No, not really. I've been just trying to find out what would be a simple API that we can. Okay, yeah, yeah. I found something.
Okay,
Uh,
perfect.
then give me a second. I don't want it to be like super overwhelming. So okay, I feel like we have to make another session where we go through like an API from scratch. Maybe like set up a Google Cloud project and like do it that way.
Yeah.
So let
And
me.
in session 5 and 6, we are going to use APIs in the project when we're working with App Engine and File Store. Yeah, for sure, we definitely skipped over some things with APIs today, so let's fix that. And TJ, I'll go ahead and bring your screen on if you're ready for that.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead. So I made a quick Google search. The thing is like to get the Google Maps, we need a Google Cloud project. Google Cloud project and like uh, ask for access keys, set up the access keys and everything. That will take us a lot of time right now. So I was working with the developer portal for Twitter, and I already had the access keys for that. So it, in order to use it, like I said, documentation, right? So getting started, um, or maybe some tutorials, and you can be like, okay, what do I want, right? Like let's say creating a campaign. So Twitter gives you a really nice documentation on like how you can use it and hmm, wait, sorry, um, getting started. Twitter API, how to look up tweets, sample code, or wait, run in Postman. Here's like a perfect documentation. Like you can see how to use the consumer key, the consumer secret, the token. If you're using Python, how to set up the environment for Python. Uh, they go in a lot of detail on how to use it and use it tweets. Yeah, Kristen, they have it. Okay, yeah, this code. Basically, this is very similar to the code that I use for my Python, like the URL, the auth. Yeah, yeah. I feel like we have to make a whole tutorial on this, Alex. I mean, to quickly answer the questions, like you go through the documentation thoroughly and Stack Overflow, like.
Yeah, I feel like half of being a good developer is just being able to go through documentation.
Yeah,
So, and that's, I'm not just saying that. That's not an exaggeration. So, yeah, if there's a specific API that you want to use, especially if it's a really popular API, I can almost guarantee you that there's going to be some good documentation on how to use it, how to set it up, how to work with the data, and things like that. So, yeah, when it comes to the Google Maps API, yes, I actually have to start working with Google Maps API on a project that I'm working on that I haven't even started with, but I'd be happy to share my experience with that in the next few days when I have to work with it. Um,
oh
in
yeah.
addition, like TJ just showed, if you're using Twitter APIs, look at all that documentation you pulled up, and that should and will be your starting point on how to interact with that API and what to expect and how to set up your environment and your code for that API.
And Google has a lot of good APIs. The Cloud Vision API is really good. Um, Yeah, their documentation is really good for that. I think you can even try it out. I'm trying to see if I can. They have like a user interface where you can try out the Cloud Vision API. Try it for
Oh, yep,
yourself. Yeah.
yep, yep. I'm pulling up another one that I'd be happy to show too. Another really cool API that I've been meaning to do a project with as well. Google Cloud API. I'm just trying to pull up the demo page. Let's try it. Oh yeah, here it is. I think I found it.
Did you find it?
This is the I'm using the natural language API.
Okay, let me
That's a
share
fun
my
one.
screen real quick.
Go for it.
I got the So this is the Cloud Vision API that you can simply try it out. This is an image that I uploaded, and you can see detected atmosphere, water, galaxy, gas, like logos, properties, safe search. It's pretty safe search. So like this would be pretty hard to like test it out on Postman. So like Google actually like gives you a platform where you can upload the image and see what you can actually do with Google Cloud Vision API, right? Like all these neurons, they're like if you don't use Cloud Vision API, you have to get a lot of data for yourself and then train the model, train the neurons. It will take probably days, months, depending on the level of complexity. But Google just gives you this API out of the box, right? So you just download like load this API in your app, and you have a like you have a object detection, you have sentiment analysis. It's also testing if this is an adult content or not, the colors, the text. So I mean, look at the text that it can actually detect, like something that an eye can't even see. Like so. Yeah, this is a really cool API from Google that we can like quickly show in our presentation for today. I think
Yeah, TJ, if you
Alex.
could go back to that page again at the bottom,
Yeah.
it'll actually say show JSON. You could see some of these.
Oh yeah.
That'd actually be very cool to see, like kind of what we were just talking about.
Yeah, this is the request URL, and you can see it ran landmark detection, face detection, object localization, logo, label, document, image, everything. And then it came back with all the results from it. Oh, this was the request. Sorry, this is the response. Um, I think these landmarks are like it's detecting there's something over there. Importance, fractions, confidence. Yeah, they have a lot of documentation on how to actually work with this. Yeah, on at this positions, it's 70% confident that it saw some text. It detected a language. It's 100% confident. And yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. I was going to quickly show the natural language API,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of these really cool APIs, by the way, you can get access to, read documentation for on Google Cloud. So with the natural language, if you log into the Google Cloud console, you can definitely mess around in there, and there is a lot of good documentation on pretty much everything inside Google Cloud. And we'd be happy to have like another study jam down the road, talking about some of these APIs in Google Cloud and seeing how they work, how to interact with them, because it is very, very cool. And also Quick Labs. Quick Labs has some really, really
Mhm.
cool um, labs that you can do to learn about some of these different APIs. So I'm actually going to quickly share my screen before we wrap up, just to show you another really cool Google API that it can be super powerful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up on another screen. All right, here we go. I'm going to share. I'm going to reset that. There we go. Okay, so here is my screen. This is the natural language API demo. If you just look up the natural language API and you scroll down on the main page, you can see the demo. So here we go. This is basically just a dummy sentence that Google puts in, okay? All right, so it's talking about them unveiling the new Android phone at CES. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's got an address, talk about objects, prices, an event, Google CEO, person's name. There's a lot of things, nouns going on here, and it's hard to expect, your app or machine to just understand, what humans and users are trying to say by their input, and the natural language API helps break that down. So when I click analyze, you can actually see it break it down into all of these things, into different nouns and things like that. I mean, it identified Google as an organization, which it better be able to if it's a Google product, let me just say. But then it said Mountain View's a location, Android and phone are consumer good. Crazy. And some of these things even has a Wikipedia article too. So that's actually very cool as well. It recognizes as a price, and $79.79 without the dollar sign as a number, all these things. And being able to classify the input of things can be so powerful. I mean, for some of you guys might not think that it is, but it is. It can be very powerful. Whether it be on your app, whether it be some type of voice assistant you're trying to create. I mean, how do voice assistants understand what we're trying to say? And the way that it does it is by breaking our input down into more readable components like this. But not only can it do entities, but it can do sentiment, which is crazy as well. And let's see, it's syntax and all this crazy stuff. I mean, look at this like syntax map right here. This is crazy. And this is all so powerful. And then categories as well. And I know this part because of a quick live that I did. But Google has a ton of different categories and then subcategories within those categories that it uses to classify some of these things in the input and try to determine what they are. That's very cool. So yeah, I mean, there's so many APIs, and I think we could spend a ton of time talking about just the APIs that exist. Hopefully this was a good starting point for APIs and just getting you exposed to APIs, what they can do, and some of the resources that are available. I am going to kind of compile some resources, kind of post-event, to share on our Discord server if you want to keep learning about APIs. With APIs, this is just one of those things that, you got to look through documentation, kind of test on your own with Postman, test in your own code, and kind of see what can you do in your app, because the sky's the limit, and some of these APIs make it so easy for you and take all the guesswork out of it, especially with some of these Google APIs. I mean, you don't have to you don't have to teach anyone or any machine anything on how to do these things. The API is just available for you to use, and there's so many things like that on Google Cloud that you can simply integrate into your code as long as you can figure out what to do with it. So it's very powerful. TJ, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up for today?
Yeah, I mean, like Alex said, it is really, really powerful. I mean, these days, like before I even write code, I'm always thinking, is there an API to do it? Like for example, if you're working with Java, like Java API, like it has sorting APIs, it has hash map API, priority queue, so when we are doing like programming, like competitive programming for a class, um, we would always be thinking, oh, if there's an API to do this, if there's an API to do this. It's same with Python. You're always thinking, oh, if there's an API, like it would saves a lot of time. It keeps the code really clean. You don't have to do a lot of debugging, but you do have to do a lot of reading though to actually like use the API effectively. But yeah, that's the power of API. They're simple but really effective.
Agreed, 100%.
Mhm.
If anyone has any questions, please drop them into our Discord server. We are going to wrap things up for today. Again, if you are tuning in for today and you're not in our Discord server, go to our main website, dscucf.com, and click the Discord button. That will let you join our Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it's kind of like Slack. And if you don't know what Slack is, it's basically like a big communication channel for free. We separate these different channels into different categories. You can ask us questions. We share information on our upcoming events and student resources and things like that. So, everyone, thanks so much for attending our event today. I know APIs is a massive topic and we could go on for hours about it. I definitely want to have a follow-up event on some of these APIs that were mentioned, but we are going to integrate APIs into our next couple of sessions. Session 5 we will probably have that in about 2 weeks from today. That way we have a little bit extra time to prepare and kind of wrap up this full stack web app and give you a better idea of how all of these little things kind of play together um, and really create a cohesive unit that functions. So again, thanks everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will catch you all in the next session. All right, TJ.
All right.
See you guys later.
Bye bye.